This podcast contains explicit language. Hey, this is Mike from 424recording.com, and I just want to say if you're a fan of the podcast or channel, please consider supporting us at patreon.com/424recording. For as little as $1 a month, you'll get exclusive rewards and help keep this podcast mattress ad free. Support us at patreon.com/424recording. Hello and welcome to 424 Recording, a podcast featuring interviews with musicians, artists, YouTubers, and other creatives about the creative process. We're also talking all things music, especially in the punk, grunge, bedroom, and indie rock genres. On this week's episode, I have a chat with actor, writer, producer Gregory Lay, whose credits include Adjustment Bureau, Forever, Blue Bloods, Law & Order SVU, and Person of Interest, among other films and TV shows. Greg recently collaborated with Sean Cunningham, Episode 3, and Mary Catherine Greenwalt, Episode 4, on the independent dramedy Hudson. We talk about his experience working on that film, how he disconnects from the noise of cities and social media, the wisdom and humility that develops with experience and age, and the importance of figuring out what drives you as a creative individual. Here's my chat with Gregory Lay. What do you think it is about those towns that are like that like 100 years ago, like it feels like that was like the place to be, and then you visit it today, but there's just something so inspiring about those places. Like, do you feel that way when you're there?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, it's just sort of like because I grew up around the city, I think that, I feel most comfortable just sort of in this chaotic, sort of high volume environment. And then, so for me, this is kind of like, the contrast is a vacation. But I mean, I think towns like this, especially in Pennsylvania, I mean, I think when there was, when there was the oil boom and these towns were sort of had a lot of wealth coming through them, not to mention the smaller communities, I just think that, you walk down the streets here and you can kind of see these old buildings and these old beautiful churches. And it's kind of, I don't know, you're right. It's inspiring in a way because it's sort of reminiscent of a simpler time that I've never known. But at the same time, it's a little depressing because you kind of look around and a lot of these towns are so dilapidated. So it's I don't know. It's kind of like a ghost town. I can only imagine what it used to be like, but you can kind of imagine people walking up and down the street with parasols. In period dress, it just seems like that. But, as cultures changed and as the economy's changed and just sort of, the entire country's changed. It just seems like a lot of these towns were sort of just, it's unbelievable up here because a lot of the houses, even in and around her place, are just either emptied out or burned out. And we said I wanted to, it would be a perfect place to shoot a horror movie because you literally will go down the street like a half mile and there'll be some cabin that looked like it was once a house that looks like it was set on fire at some point. And it's probably definitely haunted. So it would be a perfect place to shoot something rather creepy.
That sounds awesome. I would love to make a horror movie.
I know, man. It'd be pretty cool to do it with. You could do it with one location, and I don't think not only would nobody give a shit you shot something up here, they'd be probably, in terms of giving you any pushback, but I think that they'd be pretty excited about it. I feel like when you come to these small towns, even when Sean and I made our movie in Syracuse, it's just when you start getting outside of the city, and from what I've heard, especially LA, because, you kind of can't fart on the sidewalk without getting a permit for it. I think it's kind of ideal if you're an independent filmmaker to have these places where people are sort of welcoming and gracious to sort of have you there, patronizing the local businesses and just like shooting around and they get excited. It's kind of nice. It's sort of motivating too, because, you don't have that anxiety about, crossing into somebody's private space and then having, them getting pissed about it or like wanting money. And, even if you do offer them money, it's just sort of like, it's just a different vibe,
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost like the people there are more excited about it.
Yeah, exactly. An excitement that kind of, I think, wanes over time, as you kind of like, put your head down, you start to really get into the grind of that business. It's easy to lose sight of how exciting and fun and interesting and enjoyable you're doing is. So, to be able to kind of stay in that frame of mind with the support of the people around you and of the community around you is pretty cool.
Wow. I really feel like it's just really serendipitous that I'm talking to you about this, because I think that just kind of blew the doors open on this whole idea I've been thinking about because I feel like
Hmm.
there's like so much romanticism for me, and like nostalgia when I think about those places, and I think that's what it is. Now that you mention it, it's like you get so burned out working on your creative stuff, day in, day out. But when you can take yourself out of that and be in a new place like that, or somewhere that's a little bit more isolated, I feel like you can rediscover that inspiration. Like I always think about making stuff when I was like a kid, and you
Hmm.
kind of like maybe didn't think about it as much or didn't have as much experience. But as you grow and have more experience doing things, you kind of get, I don't want to say like jaded, but do you think there's like a certain like
Well,
cynicism to that?
yeah, no, I mean, there's no question. I think what I found is that life kind of comes full circle. It's like, when you're a kid, you're sort of inspired and fulfilled by the smallest, simplest of things. And then as culture around you, especially when you're a teenager in your 20s growing up, you have all these ideas of the things you're supposed to be doing and the things you're supposed to aspire to, financially and otherwise.
Sure.
And you kind of lose that spark, you lose that magic in the whole rat race of things. And then you kind of come back around and you realize, at the foundation of things is sort of this simple kind of connection to an environment, and you're not, you're sort of able to take your time. Here I can get up in the morning and it's just dead silent, and you can kind of just sit outside
Hmm.
and I don't know, just kind of take it in, and if anything, just have time with your thoughts instead of constantly thinking about where you've got to be, who you've got to be talking to, how far ahead you've got to be at the age that you are, because it's kind of a poison, right? I mean, it's I feel like it's very easy to get into that mentality where you're in such a race to accomplish something that the accomplishment itself kind of loses meaning, and it starts to come from a less human place,
Yeah.
and people around you tend to sort of be automatons and not sort of maybe be as in touch with sort of what we all have in common, which is, sort of each other, and just sort of a simpler way of life, especially if you've grown up around the city. I feel like there's a lot of pressures to, I don't know, be somebody,
Yeah.
impress other people, and then you kind of realize it's all bullshit. For me anyway, it's been massively re-inspiring by sort of kind of rediscovering that, because I felt like that when I was a kid, and then, one day I kind of snapped out of that whole rat race mentality, and once again I was able to kind of take my time and not be in such a rush. So yeah, I think it's super important, man. It keeps you grounded. It's important to be grounded.
Yeah, and I think there's, like you're saying, there's so much of that outside noise, whether it's just being in a noisy environment like New York or social media, for example. Like, I think because like I've noticed myself, like right now, whenever I'm driving, like I just keep things like complete silent, because there's just too much stuff that makes you, I don't know, man. It drives me nuts. Like I can really relate to that quietness, and being alone with your own thoughts, and just like enjoying whatever it is you're doing in the moment. Because there's so much. I
Yeah,
guess.
people avoid it, man. People
Yeah.
avoid people avoid sitting with those thoughts because
Right.
a lot of the times they don't like them, or they're telling them, something in opposition to what they're used to doing, and people are so driven by comfort that even if there's a possible aspiration to break out of that comfort and do something that they actually truly want to do, I think the reason you start to realize the reason why people don't budge, even if they're possibly going somewhere that's a little bit more fulfilling, more exciting, more real, it's change, right? And people are scared about change, and it freaks them out. So they like to stay exactly where they are. So, I
Yeah.
mean, it's such an individual thing. Um, and, look, it's tempting, right? I mean, there's social media, things like this, they kind of tap into sort of the most primal, sort of reactionary parts of people, and people get caught up in the skirmish, and they don't, I mean, and on the other hand, like, even going back to what we were saying before, it just becomes less and less human. So you start sort of speaking to people as avatars, and you don't have to look them in the eyes. And so so yeah, man. I think it's important. I think it's important to get out of the city. I think it's important to sort of reconnect with the very simple things. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people that I've been talking to, like friends, and they just kind of reaffirm that too, that, slowing down and taking some time to get away and basically just everything you said. It's like more people are coming to that realization of fulfillment
Yeah, why
and
do you think that is? What do you think it is? You think it's the age? You think it's because we're in our 30s?
I think that does have something to do with it for sure. And I like to think that it has something to do with the modern age as well. Like feel like we've done all this stuff with computers and social media and everything and not really
Mm-hmm.
reflected on like what that's doing to the culture or like driving us as individuals. And because for me, like I do like the channel, my YouTube channel is like about like recording and music, and then I have like this podcast is
Mm-hmm.
sort of like a offshoot of that. And but it becomes to be a lot of things to keep up with, and a lot of um I don't
Yeah, and you
know.
don't have to. I don't think.
Yeah.
It's kind of an illusion to a large degree, like social media and the connectivity that we all have. I mean, that's sort of the benefit of it is the fact that you can reach anybody, you can contact anybody. But at the same time, there's just there's a lot of people, and people have a tendency to want to have their voices heard. So it's a very crowded space,
Yeah.
and it's a lot of information, right? It's a lot of content, so it's a lot to sort through. So it can be really overwhelming. And I think if you dive too heavily head first into that, you can end up getting quite scrambled and lost. That's why it's really good to back away, because I think fundamentally the things that you really need to survive are quite simple. And, it's the job of advertising and other things to make you think that it's quite complex and you need a lot of things to be happy, but it's just a bunch of bullshit, right? Meant to get
Yeah.
you to spend money.
Well, I always think about like I have like a cat, like a pet cat, and also when I start feeling overwhelmed, I think about like just animals, like birds and stuff flying around. Like they live in the same world as
Mm-hmm.
us, but they have none of the same worries or concerns or fears, and it's like they're just existing and doing their thing. Like it's I mean, I guess as a human, I guess that's stuff you think about, and like you're saying, it's like where I need to be at this age, and what I need to be successful, and what do people think about me? It's like, and then I just think about like pets and things. Like they're just doing their thing. Like they're happy just to like sit in the sun, and as long as they have some food to
Yeah,
eat
that's the
once in a
unique
while.
thing about human beings, right? Is that human beings are able to consciously question their own existence
Yeah,
and as far as we know, you know, we're the only beings that are sort of consciously aware of their mortality. So it's a very odd thing. Nobody really knows why. Nobody has an answer to it. Human experience is kind of this unique thing, and I don't know. It just seems to me over time, it's really just about other people. It's really just about relating to other people and understanding other people, as opposed to moving it outside of each other, like as you were saying with animals. I mean, it's just such a it's there's a lot of wisdom in that, because I think that a simple life tends to be the most fulfilling,
yeah,
because you kind of can just be. I think the thing that gets people into trouble most of the time is their mind, right? You can get all jacked up in your mind and anxious and neurotic about all the things we were just discussing about, where
yeah.
you have to be, what you have to do. And I think it has a tendency to take people's grace and groundedness away. So, yeah, man, I think, probably should consider ourselves lucky that we have these places to go to, and that, I mean, I know I am. I mean, in that my entire life hasn't consisted of just being in the city. And I know, it's even scientifically evident that being in nature, being grounded, literally having your feet on the earth actually does make a physical difference. People might think it's bullshit, but I mean, it's not. It's not. And I think that any time that you get out of the fray and you get into nature, I think you immediately feel it and how apparent it is, in
So
my
are you
opinion.
saying like like shoes off, like feet touching, like physically
Yeah,
touching the earth?
it's
Yeah,
really interesting,
yeah.
man.
I've heard about
There's
this.
actually this whole movement called grounding, and
Yeah,
it's like this thing that I guess the Earth has its own electromagnetic sort of pulse and grounding yourself on the earth, because back in the day everybody wore it's pretty crazy, but everybody wore leather soled shoes, which is a conductor, right? So
right.
so you actually were able, there was a sort of a you were actually pretty much directly in contact with the earth. But there's actually, I'm sure there's a whole business to it too, which I know there is.
Yeah,
But people tend to wear rubber-soled shoes now, and they say that it really does fuck up your the electrical signals in your body. And you'd be surprised. And there are all these older people with like bone issues and muscle issues that start, they have these things where you can ground sort of your sheets. It sounds insane, but had I not felt it for myself, I was like, oh wow, this shit actually works. And all these people, all their problems are going away.
I think
all
there's
their
something to that
physical
for
problems
sure.
are going away because they're sort of rooting themselves to the ground, which is kind of weirdly sort of metaphorical or whatever to sort of the fact that, I don't know, I always think it's funny. The other day I saw this really interesting image in the city, and it seemed just so metaphorical to me. You have these beautiful little stone churches in New York City that have been there for, over 100 years. And then you've got these giant towering skyscrapers that just miniaturize these churches and shroud them in shadows. And it just seems like, to me, it's sort of very symbolic of kind of like where we're at. There's this sort of simple, grounded reality that people have moved away from, and they've built up higher and higher and higher and higher to the point where they're not even in touch with that anymore. And it's no surprise to me that people have lost their way moving up that high because they've lost sight of what's really important.
Yeah, that's really poignant, man.
Yeah. I was thinking about the other day because you really do see it. If you see by Rockefeller Center, if you look over towards over Rockefeller Center, there's this specific, I don't know what church it is,
like where they usually
but
put the
literally
tree.
These giant black skyscrapers just enshroud this church, and it's just, I don't know, it's wild. Especially now, I feel like you just see all these businesses merging together and creating these giant companies. I mean, things are moving so fast, and we were talking about technology before. It's changed so incredibly fast and evolved so immensely, so quickly in our lifetime. Like the other day, I was thinking about how, what has it been? I mean, you remember, we're the same age, I think. I mean, I remember my first computer was like a gigabyte, and you had a dial-up modem.
Yep.
And then within 20 years?
Yeah. I remember pre-internet days. I feel like that's the unique thing about our generation is we're in the cusp of like what it was like before all this stuff really, started moving, and then where it is now. It's
makes me so happy that we were born then. I'm really glad we were born on the cusp, because I don't know. I don't think you or I can really understand what that will evolve into, a generation of people that have known no other way. Because when you think about it, and look, I don't know how kids are raised now, but I mean, I just remember going outside. There was a lot less worry, a lot less
for sure.
neurosis about kids going out, playing, being outside.
I was like in like first grade, like riding my bike like all over the place, like places that I don't even understand how my parents like thought it was okay. Like thinking now of how people are, but like I used to ride my bike like miles and miles away from my house when I was like, I had to be like, I don't know, what's first grade, 8, or I don't even know how old I was. I was really young.
Yeah. I just had this inevitably this happens to me. I have heard from my agent in 6 months, and any time, it's actually quite infuriating and almost insane. But the moment you make plans to go away, or you are away somewhere, the fucking phone rings. Right. And it's happened to me at least a dozen times, and it's not even funny anymore because it's literally that common. And in between, nothing. You'll get like 2 phone calls when for 6 months you've had no phone calls. So anyway, I just had to.
Well, maybe you got to go on vacation more then, Greg.
What's up?
Maybe you got to go on vacation more then.
I know, like short little vacations that aren't that drastic, so that I can just turn right around and come back, which I'm actually going to do tonight. I just got here yesterday, and
oh man,
I'm jumping in the car going back to New York City.
Dude, I'm glad I caught you before this happened. It's kind of funny that everything we're talking about and then that happened.
Yeah, exactly. I try to be like mellow about it. I'm like, all right, because in the back of my head, I almost know what's going to happen at this point. So I'm just like, all right, this is what it is, I guess, right?
Yeah. What's that process like for you? So you're an actor. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm an actor. I to be honest, I don't know what category I fall into. To be honest with you, I don't relate that much, to be totally honest with you, to all the other actors I know, because it's not really the basis of sort of what drives me in all of this is more storytelling and more human psychology and human behavior and human experience than anything else. And it kind of lends itself to a lot of different things, including writing and speaking and having conversations like this. And the acting aspect of it is a much more sort of human interest to me. And I feel like, what I've discovered by this point is I'm most happy when I'm sort of part of the process of storytelling. And most of the people that I know that consider themselves actors, which I really don't know anything about, are people who are sort of at the behest of other people, of phones ringing, of them getting opportunities, being thrown a bone by somebody else. I'm just not comfortable with that. It's just not, and nor am I really interested in waiting for somebody else to give me an opportunity to do something or play a character that I feel like truly showcases who I am. Because, look, the bottom line is, in the beginning of this career, you spend a lot of time going out for empty TV roles that are, I've done a bunch of that stuff. You sort of get on set and you leave, and, you might make a nice paycheck, but you sort of are missing a sort of a core fulfillment from the process that I think for me only comes in when I'm part of the sort of the foundation of the story that's being told.
Yeah, it sounds like you go from 2 dimensions to 3.
It's hard. It's interesting, because I am, but I have a hard time, I guess, pinning myself down to just that, because I don't know if I never acted again, if that necessarily would mean that I would be this miserable person. I think that there's a lot of other things I found that I'm interested in, and I think as a kid, I was obsessed with film. All I did was watch films, and I was obsessed with comedy in the 80s and the 90s. There's some of these wonderful films that I got to see growing up, and I always wanted to be part of that. And I think what I've realized is really the collaborating with other like-minded people who are inspired and talented. Being in that moment, while you're shooting is really the most enjoyable part to me. I think I'd be rather unhappy if I found myself in a position where I was kind of coming in, being treated somewhat like a pawn, and then being dismissed. It really doesn't interest me that much, nor do I think those roles are really that interesting most of the time. How enjoyable is it to go in and be a SWAT team bomb tech?
Right. I mean, so before you were getting these roles though, was there a part of you that thought that was gonna make you happy to pursue acting?
I think so. I think when you're a kid, when I was a kid, it was a lot about, I find that when you don't know the landscape of things and you can't possibly really understand from the inside out how this all operates.
Yeah.
When you're that young, because you haven't met the people involved.
You haven't seen behind the curtain.
The people that represent you, the people that produce things. You don't know the landscape of exactly how this entire industry works. And so you just have this sort of vague notion that, you want to be on TV, that you want to be involved. You want to, it's rather superficial.
Yeah.
And then, so I think a lot of people continue on that path, but, I think because at the core of it, I kind of want to make a difference in people's lives. It's sort of, I needed to get underneath things a little bit more. And then when I started to see the landscape of things, I started to understand what agents did and producers did and where directors came in and all of these different parts of the process and, what these people did. And I sort of got a much clearer idea of where I wanted to be involved in it. But absolutely, when I was younger, it was sort of this very, very simple, vague notion of wanting to be on TV. And I'm so glad that I evolved, in my opinion, past that, because it's a pretty vapid existence from my point of view, unless you're lucky enough to be working with brilliant people. You know what I mean? Right from the get-go.
Yeah. And
but what a lot of people want to do, obviously, is work with brilliant directors and work on great stories, when the reality is you're going out on a Wendy's commercial, you know what I mean? And you're thinking in your head somehow that a commercial and a TV show and a play and a feature film somehow have anything to do with one another. And they do, of course, superficially, but to me, those are like completely different careers. Like you start to realize, focus in on exactly what it is that you want out of all this. And it's funny thinking back when you go on these commercial auditions when you're younger and you think it has anything to do with acting and not to do with commerce, because, you leave, you're like, I think I did a good job. I think I really did a great performance. Meanwhile, they're just looking for a look. It's a bunch of people sitting around a table, corporate people who don't know anything about performance, who are just basically trying to convince one another why they like somebody's haircut,
Yeah, it sounds like that classic place of where art and commerce collide.
Yeah, man, that's the balance. That's really, you kind of hit it on the head. I think this whole career is a dance between those two things, and I think the better you are at dancing, the way better you are at examining what's going on and dancing in between those two things and being, intelligent about it. Because look, man, I know a lot of people who shit on the business side of this, and they say, fuck that, I just want to be a real artist. And it's like, okay, but you also need opportunity. You need people behind you. So you have to be good with people. You have to be good. You have to pick your battles. You have to know your audience in life and in the work that you're doing. And I think if you can kind of find a good dance between, making sure you're keeping your side of the street clean commercially, and you're doing the work, but you're not losing sight of the fact that you're in this for sort of some human artistic fulfillment, something much more fundamental than getting a paycheck or sort of being famous, getting fucking attention, whatever, you start to realize that, this beautiful thing happens where as long as you're making enough money to survive and you're being honest with yourself about what you want to be doing and who you want to be around, you're surrounding yourself with good people, then you're going to be fine. But if you're constantly chasing that carrot, and that's what everybody does in this life, man. They chase this carrot and they know that once they get it, from all the wisdom from the most ancient of times, we've been told that there's no end game. And there's no end game. But we as human beings seemingly convince ourselves or delude ourselves or give ourselves temporary amnesia that somehow when we get the thing we want or we think we want, then we'll have reached the pinnacle. But it's just not true. And unfortunately, some people spend their entire lives chasing something, make a ton of money only to find out that they're miserable and depressed, and I think that it's a sad thing. I just feel, I don't know, I consider myself pretty blessed to be at a point, even by this age, that I'm like, you know what, as long as I'm making enough money to feed myself and to do some things that I want to do, and I'm keeping my side of the street clean, and I have really good people around me, and my relationships are solid, I'm going to be fine. I can do that till I die. I have no problem. And then, you just sort of let it ride.
Dude, I think that's a super healthy attitude to have. I mean, especially in the acting business. I mean, all you hear are constantly stories about, if these people had reached this pinnacle or this place where they were truly happy, like they wouldn't have like all these problems that they have with, addiction and other types of, crutches that, you get to this place and you look around and, hey,
yeah,
this
man.
is not what I thought it was going to be, or this doesn't heal my soul the way I was thinking this was going to solve all my problems.
Yeah, and to be honest, I mean, that was a real concern of mine. I mean, because I remember when I got out of college, I thought about being an actor, and I was like, what a self-involved, self-serving choice to make in life. Because coming out of college, I just had this thought in my head, like, what the hell am I doing if I'm not helping other people? Like, what is the purpose on this earth? It can't possibly be just to make money and to fulfill this sort of dream that I had. There must be some greater purpose that one can have other than attaining those things. And then slowly but surely, thankfully, I started to realize that wasn't, I was scared. I was scared that that's all it was about, that I wanted attention and I wanted money and I wanted people to know who I was. And then, it took me a while, but slowly I started to realize that, I had a deeper drive to do something more important. And I'm still on that journey. You know what I mean? I'm still figuring it out, but there was a lot of pressure that's been alleviated as a result of kind of being honest with myself about those things. And you know, it really did take me to my mid-30s, man. I mean, I don't think I had any fucking clue what the hell I was doing till I was 30 years old in retrospect. I think, you know, it's just really interesting to me that in life, at every phase of our existence, we have such confidence in who we are, what we think, what we want, all these things. And then every time you get a little bit older, you look back and you're like, Jesus, I had no idea what the hell I was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly where I'm at too. It's actually really refreshing to hear you talking about this and like the perspective that you've gained. Cause it's like, I was such an arrogant, like little shit, you know, like back when I was like 19, you know, I thought I understood everything about the world. And like, I think as you get older, you realize like more and more how little you actually understand about the way things work and life.
And that's okay. You know, I think letting go is a big part of that. I think that's the biggest thing because, you know, look, man, I don't even think I know the real struggle of living and existing is that we have this brain that's a computer that filters our experience. And then there's the part of us that just experiences. And I think if you can train yourself, which I think everybody can, but first you have to acknowledge, you know, that you've got this duality to you, that you've got to be able to, you can't let the computer go haywire because in my opinion, that's why people get neurotic and anxious and crazy because they try so hard to figure everything out. When if you just let yourself be, you usually find out that things are just fine and things are going to be fine. But there's really nothing to worry about because you're going to die eventually. And I think being in denial of that fact is though, and I think there's an immortality issue that people have. Somehow they think they're going to figure out how to live forever. And it's sort of this life pursuit. And then there's this horrible end where you kind of realize maybe you missed the boat. You know, Alan Watts, that philosopher, has an unbelievable, you know, they've made some animations out of it. You should look it up. I'm sure you might have already seen it when, you know, when we're kids, we're put into this sort of straight line mentality, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, go to college, get out of college, join the workforce. And then you're supposed to have made it to that place at some point when you realize it was never really about getting anywhere. It was really about the dance along the way. And I think it's really hard for people because you've got to keep yourself centered and grounded and in control so that you don't make yourself nuts because there's nothing to figure out, man. You know, nobody has the answer. And at the same time, everybody's in the same boat. You know, everybody thinks we're so different, but everybody's still struggling to find meaning in all this, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, everybody's on like a different journey, but like we share pretty much the exact same hardware and tools to, you know, I don't know.
Absolutely. And the same questions and the same insecurities.
Yep.
The same mystery for all of us. So I don't know. It's a shame. You know, people are, especially now, things are so divisive. People are so divisive, and it sort of, in a way, as we were saying with social media, it can really feed into the worst parts of ourselves.
Yeah, I agree completely.
Yeah, man. So, you know, it's even good talking to you about this because I find that when we talk to each other about this, it's kind of reaffirming for all of us. And it's, as you said, it's kind of nice to know that there are other people out there that are struggling with the same things and have the same questions and are having the same human experience. That's
actually like the most amount of feedback I get about the podcast, that this very thing we're doing right now is that exactly what you just said. You know, like people find a lot of comfort in just listening to these type of conversations because like a lot of the same creative, artistic, and people in general struggle with all the things we're talking about. And, you know, you face the world.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It feels like you face the world alone, but like we're all here, like trying to get through this and do the same thing and doing our best, you know?
Yeah, man. And it's important not to try so hard to convince people that you got it all figured out because you don't, right?
Right. Yeah. Crazy, man.
So what? You told Sean to hang up? Did he actually go away, or is he still listening?
I think my phone. Oh, he's still here. Sean, you still here? He's been like, so Sean's been listening this whole time. He was like, come on, man, just let me listen into this conversation. I was like, dude, it's gonna be recorded. Obviously, you can listen to it on Thursday or whatever. And I don't know.
Yeah, have you spoken to Sean at all on this yet?
I have, yeah. He's on I think he's on the first one when I was like speaking with I started like it's basically it was started as like recording Q&A, and then I shifted over to talking to people because we took off because 4th of July, and then now it's just kind of spun into just talking to creative people and creatives about the artistic process. So, but I got to get him back
Oh,
on here.
awesome.
Yeah. Yeah. We talked a little bit about Hudson. Is there anything like,
Yeah.
do you want to like chat a little bit about that? Like what, what that was like and working on that? You have time?
Well, I mean, I'm super proud of it, man, and I think it's because Sean and I are obviously best friends, and I think that, you know, we've always sort of been on the same page with the things that we're trying to express and the emotions that we're trying to express, and I think that one of the most outstanding things about the process was just the courage that Sean had to sort of, you know, not only fund the whole thing, but take a big risk on just allowing the characters that we wrote to sort of create themselves on screen. And I think that we both had this idea that if we structured the story, you know, tightly enough, and we kind of knew who these people were, that if we chose the right actors and had the circumstances outlined well enough, that we would be able to kind of like catch some magic. And I'm really proud of it. And I, you know, can never really, it's very hard to be objective, obviously, but like I said, as excited as I am about, you know, people seeing it, I'm super proud about what we've done, and I'm super proud that that we were able to accomplish it. And I think it's the first of many. And I guess the one thing that sort of stands out to me is the process that we used, because it wasn't sort of your typical sort of screenplay to screen process. We sort of allowed ourselves to sort of be open to what was in the ether and catch some things in the moment. And I'm just really looking forward to developing that process further, because, you know, I think we have something special. It's a very simple movie, but it's sort of simple in the way that I've always liked movies, because I don't think they always have to hit you over the head. And much like this conversation, I think that that there's breathing room to understand that, you know, the people in that film were at a crossroads where they all crossed paths, you know, at this specific point in their lives, and they kind of come out a little bit different at the end, which is what I think every interaction that we have with each other kind of results in. You know, hopefully, if you're present enough, you know, you've learned a little bit of something and maybe changed for the better in the process, you know?
Wow, yeah, that's really profound, man. Like I never like considered that. Like even like every single kind of interaction you have, you can come away just changed in like a way.
Yeah. And I think it's something that you can teach yourself. I think that there's a cognitive reframing. Who was talking about that? I was listening to Joe Rogan's podcast, and Chuck Palahniuk, the guy who wrote Fight Club.
Yeah, yeah.
He was talking about that, and I'm so on the same page. I think that the real trick is that whatever happens in your life, whether it be negative or positive, there truly is some positive in that thing, and there is some positive about even an unpleasant interaction. And I've had plenty of unpleasant interactions, and I think as long as you're willing to be honest, look at yourself, call yourself out on your own bullshit,
Yeah.
and not be prideful, have some humility, you can keep evolving into just a better and better person. I think where people get into trouble is where they hide behind their pride and their ego.
For sure.
And they're just too concerned with just seeming like they're not human, you know?
And like you were saying before, seeming like you have all the answers.
Yes. Yeah, you really do. That's the funny thing, right? And that's been something that has been mentioned by, you know, any number of ancient philosophers who really are, you know, in Buddhism. It's just really a matter of understanding that you kind of have everything that you already need, but it's this chase for the external, right? That everybody's always just chasing after these things or these relationships or these people to make everything all right, not realizing that if you don't sort of settle into yourself and like yourself in all your flaws, then, you know, you're going to struggle a lot more than you need to.
Well, that's actually something I've been struggling with for a while. Like sometimes even with doing all this creative stuff, I'm wondering if it's just a way to, you know, right some wrong that happened to me as a kid, or, you know, trying to make people love me because I didn't feel loved enough, or, you know, whatever the reason
all
is.
that.
Yeah, it's
all
like
that, man. And I mean, that's why I do it. You know, I mean, I
Do you
I
think
got
you'd
plenty of
be an
baggage
actor?
from my parents' divorce,
Yeah.
etc. Right? Relationships, heartbreaks that I've had
Yeah.
when I was young, having overly romanticized points of view about life and what was going to
Yeah.
happen in my life,
Oh, yeah.
and then realizing that there's a beauty in sort of the flawed nature of everything, and that, you know, in the spaces in between are kind of where the real beauty is, not in the things that we kind of attain or the places that we get to. You know, I run. I'm a long distance runner on the side, and I run a few marathons. And I remember that first marathon I ran. I had trained, really hard for it, and I was, running towards the end. And then when you get to the end, you kind of realize it's over, and you realize that whole journey leading up to that race was really what it was about.
Yeah.
And it kind of just clicked on, and I was like, you know what, you gotta just remember, try to be present as much as you can, because it's always about that journey,
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's something that comes up a lot with the people I talk to too on here. And, just, it's like, I mean, it's a classic, almost a cliche at this point, but it's not the journey. It's not the destination. It's about the journey. It's,
Yeah, man. And I think that that's an important thing to say, because I think because people say these things often and we write them off as cliches, and I think it's obvious why we do, because they're used in advertising,
Yeah.
in order to lure people into buying things, or people just throw them around.
But
As
there's
I've
a lot of
gotten
truth.
older, when I've had moments of clarity,
Yeah.
you all of a sudden really listen to those words, and you
Yeah.
see this like real deep truth in them.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
you see that you've kind of just been glazing over them, and all of a sudden they're able to sort of fill you with this real meaning, because
Yep.
they're cliches for a reason,
That's the funniest thing about them. It becomes like suddenly they're not just like these words that you've heard over and over again. It becomes, you like understand it, like what you said, like on a whole different level of, I don't know, it just clicks, and it's like, okay, I understand now, like why people always say that. It's like just do
Yeah,
it too, like Nike. I mean, that's like such a cliche, like just do it, but like that's like really the best advice you could really have for yourself or for anybody who's struggling to like accomplish anything is, instead of thinking about it, instead of in action, like just do it.
Absolutely, man. Because what do people most of the time do? They sit there and they overthink it,
Mhm.
and they tell themselves all the reasons why they shouldn't, or what
They
could possibly
complain
go
about it,
wrong.
why
Not
they don't have what they
realizing that, every time you do just take action, it just brings you a little bit, it makes you a little bit wiser. And it makes you realize that, I've seen this in any number of circumstances in my life. All that fear and anticipation always ends up dissolving by the time you actually take that step forward. You realize there was nothing to be scared of.
That's the hardest part.
Always just
the starting. Yeah, absolutely. It's awesome.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I actually watched Hudson. I don't know. Sean sent me the raw cut, and I fucking loved it, man.
Did you, man? Oh, I'm so glad.
Yeah, like
I'm glad, man. It's tricky, right? Because you sort of make something
so
and
close
it's
to
personal,
it. Yeah.
and you just don't know how it's going to play, and you just hope that people relate to it. It was kind of our first venture into a feature film, which I think can be kind of intimidating, because it's a big box to unpack. But that's great, man. I'm really glad you liked it. It's good to hear. I hope other people agree with you.
Yeah. When is the premiere? It's going to be in Syracuse, New York, right?
Yeah, there's a screening on October 4th, and I know Sean had told me we're waiting on a few festivals.
Yeah.
So we'll be announcing those as we hear about them. Hopefully, we get into at least one. And
awesome.
And other than that, man, I mean, it's just always kind of about moving forward. So I think we've just been discussing what we're going to do next, and kind of trying to regroup.
What do you think's next on the horizon?
What's that?
What do you think's next on the horizon? What have you guys been chatting about?
I don't know. We've been talking about just going a little bit deeper into another genre, maybe sort of mixing it up, because there's other elements. And Sean and I are always talking like you and I are talking right now, pretty much. And I think that, trying to get to the bottom of what it is that we're trying to say and what interests us, and getting a little bit more into that sort of human psyche in terms of panic, and maybe a little bit more of the darkness. I think that this was sort of almost like a celebratory film about, love and apology and about friendship and about, human beings sort of crossing each other's paths in life. And I think it was also kind of a love letter to like just the autumn. I think Sean and I had this sort of fixation on the fall, especially in the East Coast.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
It was kind of like, it sort of almost seemed like that's where the whole thing was birthed from.
Mm-hmm.
So I really don't know what it will be specifically, but I think that we might try to explore something a little bit darker next time. But we shall see.
Well, it sounds like you got the perfect set where you are right now. You're saying this is a great place to have a horror movie. I don't know if you're thinking that dark, but I can't wait, man. I feel like Hudson, to me, I think it's going to be one of those films people look back on in like 5 years and say, wow, I can't believe like these guys did this and everybody was, I can't believe all these people that are in this are in this.
Oh man, that's really nice of you to say. Let's hope so.
Yeah, dude. So as a horror movie now, I guess this is one of my last questions for you. I don't know if you got to get going or... but do you see yourself?
Oh yeah, I'm good.
Oh, cool. So with the horror movie idea, do you see yourself as like the victim or the, as like the evil entity?
I don't know. I mean, I think Sean and I both are kind of fascinated with sort of psychological thriller, psychological horror. So I think, if anything, it would be an exploration of the duality of somebody's personality, of the contradictions of somebody's humanity. So maybe somebody who's on the brink of breaking or has broken, I feel like that's sort of very, very interesting. So I feel like it would be exploring that. And if I were to play that character, I think that's sort of where we would start from. Somebody who, is in the middle of that transition, you know.
I had a feeling you were, like both, basically. Yeah. That's awesome.
What was that? Sorry?
No, I had a feeling that, I don't know, for some reason, when I was like thinking about that question, I kind of like, based on this conversation, I was like, he's probably going to say like both.
Yeah, because, to be honest, man, that's the interesting thing. People always ask me if I do comedy or I do drama, and I love comedy. I've always been obsessed with comedy. Comedy is something that's kind of come naturally to me, and I've done it for a long time, but I'm also extremely interested in human psychology and the darkness of human psychology, and I have my own dark side, obviously.
Yeah, I think everybody does.
Sean does, and you do. So it's endlessly fascinating to me how the contradiction in humanity. I think that we tend to look for these one-dimensional versions of people where we think this is a good person, this is a just person or a kind person, and then this person is evil, this person is bad. And I think the one thing that's always seems to be missing is that, as we've seen throughout history, and maybe we ignore it a little bit too much, is that people are always both. The most evil person in the world can be capable of giving you very useful wisdom, and one of the kindest, most, wise people are capable of atrocity. And that's just life, right? That's just the way it is. And I think that people run away from that because they don't want to see their own darkness, but it's always there, Yeah,
and I think like, one of the best shows of all time that people agree on, like Breaking Bad, I think that's what makes
Breaking Bad, absolutely, like, exactly.
The moral ambiguity.
And, it was done so brilliantly. I mean, it's such a brilliant writing.
Yeah, it's like, that's the gray areas is really where it's like you were saying too, like the space in between, I mean, it's a little bit different, the space in between your journey, but like it's the same idea. It's like, it's where those things kind of mix. And I mean, that's why I always really like movies like Blue Velvet, where Jeffrey, he's like this innocent kid and he just kind of goes back to his hometown and he's like, just out of high school or whatever, coming back. And then he gets into this, like, gets sucked into this like dark underbelly, like, I mean, really dark world, and it's like, I don't know, stuff like that. Yeah. I can't wait, man. This is like, I'm really excited.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. Me too. Definitely keep you posted on it, man. And I'm glad you saw the movie.
Yeah, dude. I'm gonna be definitely coming out to the screening too. I'm excited.
Oh, great, man. That's fantastic. Yeah, I hope we get some people to see it. I think Sean and I are kind of trying to bust our asses to make sure that we fill that thing up as much as you can. So anybody in Syracuse, in the Syracuse area, Palace Theater, October 4th. I think it's at 7:30, something like that.
Yeah, I'll definitely bump it and find out.
Yeah, it'll be exciting to see it on the big screen too. That's a whole other experience.
Yeah, that's I can't wait. Like I almost didn't want to watch it when Sean sent me the rough cut because I was like, I want to like experience it, in the theater.
Yeah.
But
yeah. Hopefully it'll be a little bit different. It's kind of a scenic movie, so I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that landscape on screen.
Yeah, for sure. It's you guys like I don't know, man. It's a great movie.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that.
Oh, and Greg, one last thing. Is there anywhere online people can find you?
I have a website, GregoryLayActor.com, www.GregoryLayActor, GregoryLay actor.com, and then, let's see, I have a few movies on Amazon. You can kind of look it up. I have a movie that I made with another buddy of mine called Lonely Boys, which is on Amazon. A movie called Crazy Famous that came out last year. That's also on Amazon Prime. You can check that out. It's a silly little movie. It's fun. A fun comedy. But yeah, man, I'm always kind of, always trying to do something. So,
hell yeah.
Yeah. And then of course, IMDb, you can kind of check out all the shit I've done and all that. Thanks so much, MJ.
Thanks, Greg. Oh man, what a cool dude. It's funny. I always, I've watched a lot of things that Greg's been in because he works a lot with Sean on some commercials and films and stuff. And it's funny because I feel like I know him, even though I've never really spoken to him. We were saying how this was like the first time we really talked, but because we both know Sean, it's funny because we both kind of orbit around him a little bit, but we've never really crossed paths in any sort of capacity where we were chatting, maybe hi here and there. But so, man, so good talking to Greg. I hope this conversation gives you some ideas about what you're working on and the journey we're all on. And hey, just remember, you're not alone out there, all right? This is Mike from 424recording.com. Godspeed, my friends. Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe and review the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you want to support the podcast, you can check out patreon.com/424recording. Appreciate you, my friends. And make sure you do something you want to do today, okay?